Okay, so for our final session, we're talking about the psychology of traditions. So I'm going to be thinking about traditions, things that we do over and over again, things that we are familiar with. And then in a little bit of a sideways turn, I'm going to think about how we can apply our understanding of familiarity and things that we do again and again and that we do because we know them and because we like them. I'm going to apply that to a particular area of psychology. So to apply it a little bit to forensic psychology. I'm Dr. Jill Harrop. I'm a senior lecturer in forensic psychology here at the university. Some of you may have applied to come and do the forensic psychology course here. If you've just come to do pure psychology, so you want to do a range of subjects in psychology, or you're on one of the other pathways, you'd still have the opportunity to do a little bit of forensic psychology as well. So that's my plug for the forensic psychology. So, traditions. We've got some Christmas traditions here, things that we do again and again, year after year. And the reason we do them is because they make it feel like Christmas. We've probably all heard someone say, I know it's Christmas when I see the advert with the Coca-Cola truck. Or, more recently, I know it's Christmas when the John Lewis advert comes on television, and we can all start to dissect whether we think this year was the best year ever or this year was the year they dropped the ball. So we all have things that say, yep, for me, this is Christmas. So some traditional ones might be stockings hung, Christmas tree up, Christmas dinner, Christmas lights outside the house. More recently, again, we've got elf on the shelf. This seems to be something that, thank goodness, this emerged after my children were past the age of wanting this. But there seems to be a lot of frantic posting on Facebook and Instagram, certainly of my friends, of what can we make the elf do tonight? And the elf started off doing kind of fun, whimsical things. And now it's quite frightening, some of the traumatic things they've got these elves doing, because people have just run out of ideas, because every day they want the kids to wake up and see the elf having done something naughty or funny overnight. Jason Manford's Instagram feed is particularly funny for some of the things he gets his elf to do. So these are traditions. These are things that we do again and again, and things that say to us, yep, this is Christmas. Now, some things we'll all do. Things like putting a tree up, we'll all do. Some things are specific to your lifestyle, your family. So an elf on the shelf might be something that you have if you have children of an age that are sort of appropriate for that. Some others are completely individual to yourself, your family, your friends, the people around you. So for example, 5 years ago, I moved to Worcester. And when I moved here, the area where I live had a massive big Christmas tree. And the tree itself was lovely, but then they put lights on half the tree, but not the other half. So it looked terrible. So we were like, wow, that's this weirdest, strangest Christmas tree I've ever seen. And each time we drive up at night, it would look like half a Christmas tree. And then the next year, it was in the paper saying, we got this really wrong last year, so we're going to have a great Christmas tree this year. And they put all the lights on the top. So it looked like a sort of hovering mini Christmas tree when you drove up in the dark. And each year, it is really, they do something really bad with this tree. And for my kids and I, that's become a tradition. What's going to go wrong with the tree this year? How is the tree going to be terrible this year? And that's how we know it's Christmas. When we see the terrible tree go up, we think that's fantastic, it's Christmas time. This year, they put up a lovely tree and they put the lights all nicely spaced out. We were quite disappointed. We thought, oh, okay. And then there was a storm and part of the lights blew off and now it looks like 2/3 of a tree. And we're like, oh, now it's Christmas. That's our tradition. To us, that's what Christmas looks like. So tradition is something that happens again and again, and it can be individual to you, or it can be something that everybody else in the country or everyone else in your city is doing too. You know, pulling crackers or having turkey on Christmas Day. And sometimes, with some traditions, we don't do them necessarily because we like them. Nobody in our house really likes turkey. My son keeps asking, can we not just have fish fingers for Christmas Day? I say, no, we can't, because it's Christmas Day, so we're having turkey, because that is what you do, right? And if we don't have turkey, it doesn't feel like Christmas. We do things even though we don't like them, we don't like to eat them. My dog does not like to eat any of the little snack treats that you get in these little doggy Christmas stockings. But every year we buy him a doggy Christmas stocking, because that's what we do. And if we didn't have one, we thought this year we're not going to get it, because he's never going to eat it. By Christmas Eve, I know we would all be sat there going, oh, we've not got it, should we just go out and get one? And we'd have to like drive around late on Christmas Eve trying to find a dog stocking. Traditions mean something to us. They're meaningful to us. They have semantic importance. They are meaningful to us as individuals. They tell us it's Christmas. They tell us it's that time of year where we get to spend time with family, where we get presents, we hang our stockings up to receive those presents, we decorate our houses, and we have this tradition. We know that if we do X, Y, and Z, that means that it's Christmas. So we have these traditions. So what can this tell us about how people think at Christmas? There's a study way back in 2002 where Kasser and Sheldon tried to figure out why people like these Christmas traditions. We do the same things again and again. Does that necessarily mean that it makes us happier? Do we feel satisfied? So they got 117 participants and they measured their levels of satisfaction, their stress and their emotional state. And they said, what do you do at Christmas? What are your specific traditions? What are your behaviours? And how does that link to your satisfaction, stress and emotional state? Now, probably not surprisingly, they found the strongest link was between happiness and family. If you're with your family, you're happier, you're satisfied, you feel good. It's the people around you. Those people who had the lowest well-being score on this particular study were those who focused on spending and presents. Now, this is probably, you might say, actually, this isn't that surprising. We know that Christmas is actually about, spending time with family. You watch any Christmas movie, and the message of a Christmas movie is not, the bigger the present you get, the better your Christmas is going to be. It's about spending time with your loved ones, spending time with your family and friends, and enjoying Christmas with them. So we know family, happy, spending time with them makes us feel good. Just spending lots of money on people doesn't make us feel so good. Does that mean we say, right, I'm not going to spend any money on people, not going to spend any money at all? Absolutely not. Every year I say, right, I'm only going to buy my kids like 3 presents each, and then I go on Mum's Day and people post their lists of what they've bought their kids. I think that's ridiculous. I'm not going to buy that much for my kids. And I buy them just a few carefully thought out presents. Then about 3 days before Christmas, and actually it happened yesterday, I think, oh Lord, my present piles aren't big enough. I have to go shopping. And I go and I buy a load of stuff they won't want, that we're probably going to give to the charity shop in about July. But I feel better because they've got a nice pile of presents for under the tree. So even if we know that something makes us happier, even if we know that spending more money won't make us feel better, feel more satisfied or happy at Christmas, we still do it because it just feels right. It's tradition. I always like to see the kids have this nice pile of presents. And yet, last year, I spent far too much money on my kids at Christmas, bought ridiculous Lego sets that they didn't even build till the summer when I kind of ordered them to build the Lego sets they got for Christmas. But if you ask them what they remember from last Christmas, my eldest son brought a Christingle candle home from school, which was like an orange with like candles in it and cinnamon and spice, and he put it in his school bag, and then he dropped a really big textbook on it, and this thing exploded, Christingle everywhere. And it took a long time to clean up. We were cleaning up from the bag, from the wall, Christingle everywhere. Now, you ask my kids what they remember about last Christmas, it wasn't the Lego sets, it wasn't the money, it was the exploding Christingle, which didn't cost me much, cost me emotionally because it was a great pain to clean up. But that's what they remember. You say, oh, remember Christmas last year? It was about the exploding Christingle. So even though I know, hang on a minute, it wasn't all the things I bought them last year that they remember, I might think, I'm not going to spend a lot of money again this year. And then yesterday, there I am, tearing up and down Worcester High Street thinking, what can I get my kid? Ideally, what can I get them that's cheap but big? So it looks like they've got a nice big box, but it's not going to cost me very much. So even though we know what's linked to well-being and what's not, it doesn't necessarily change our behaviour. Kasser and Sheldon found that 44% of people who were satisfied with their Christmas experience, they said, yeah, I was happy, I enjoyed it, it's very satisfactory, I feel good in myself. They still said they experienced stress. Now, does that mean it was negative stress? Does that mean it was a problem? Not necessarily. Stress can go 2 ways. We can have positive stress, which we call eustress, or negative stress, distress. Supposing I'm organising a New Year's party for all my friends, I'm getting everybody over, I am cooking all the food during the day, I'm excited to see everybody, I'm probably feeling a little bit stressed. But I'm not upset, I'm not distressed. I'm happy, I'm looking forward to it. There's positive stress, eustress. Or we've got distress. When something bad happens, we feel stressed, but we feel bad about it. So we can't necessarily say that because people experience stress that it was problematic for them. We might want to say, what kind of stress did they experience? And that's something, if you study psychology, you will see again and again. We'll say, this person had this finding, but let's pick it apart. What does this actually mean? If they're saying 44% experienced stress, what kind of stress was it? We might also say, well, how did you ask them how stressed they were? And we can see this in the gender-based question. The results found males were happier and less stressed than females. Is that the case? Are females more stressed at Christmas? Do they have less sort of preventative measures to stop experiencing stress? Researchers have suggested that actually part of the reason females might report being more stressed is because they're more willing to say, I found that really tough, actually. I feel stressed, I feel that was difficult, I'm not sure I'm able to cope with this. They found that females are more willing to share that emotion than males. So maybe actually we have males and females feeling equally stressed at Christmas, but it's something about the reporting. So again, it's asking, where did you get that figure? Why did you get that result? What we never ever do as psychologists is assume that just because a researcher found something, that must be true. We exercise professional curiosity. We ask the right questions. And we say, well, hang on a minute, why did they find that? What else could explain that finding? What else do we know about this piece of research? Could they have done it better? And if they could have done it better, how? What changes could they have made? Other differences they found was that older participants are happier than younger participants in the study. So the older someone gets, the more happy and satisfied they feel at Christmas. Now, the researcher felt that this was probably because of religion and family and tradition becoming more important to people as they get older. But again, that's something that our researcher has suggested as a possible explanation for their findings. We don't know that. They didn't go back and ask those people, why were you happier? So again, professional curiosity kicking in, asking those questions. We've got a finding, but how do we explain it? What could explain it, and how could we test that explanation? Then our lower well-being, we've already seen, had a focus on spending and presents. So if you are purely focused on what you're going to give to others and what you're going to get from others, you will overall experience less well-being and less happiness at Christmas. So, what have other researchers told us about this? Bloom suggests we have this fixed list of pleasures. The reason that we enjoy something, the reason a tradition can make us feel happy or feel good within ourselves, give us emotional well-being, is because we have a very fixed list of pleasures. These are the things that give us pleasure. Food, drink, intimacy with others. Right back to years gone by. And I'm sure Daniel can probably explain this in much more detail, and we'll be happy to explain this to you over mince pies. But it comes back to the idea that we have the same desires, the same pleasures that we had, hundreds, thousands of years ago. And even though we have different food, different drink, different experiences, different things, gadgets and toys and tech now, it all goes back to that same fixed list of pleasures. So the reason we engage in those traditions year after year is because they meet that list of pleasures. They hit something on that list. What I think is that Ward has got it right. It's the familiarity principle. We like what we know. It makes sense to us. Familiarity is nice. It makes us feel secure, makes us feel safe. Now, this is something that the majority of people will experience, this familiarity principle. In forensic psychology, it's fantastic because an offender will do the same thing again and again and again. Even if they think they're changing it up, even if they think they are deliberately altering their behaviour, the reality is that they will come back to the same pattern of behaviour again and again and again. So it helps catch them, which is great, and it helps change their behaviour later. So we can see this idea that we like what we know, we like what's familiar to us, helps us understand Christmas traditions, but it also helps us understand other areas of psychology, like offenders. We know that repeated exposure to people can increase their attractiveness to others. When you see someone again and again, the more you see of them, the more they are familiar to you, and the more attractive they become. We are attracted to people who are familiar to us because they feel safe. We think, I know this person, I know what they're like, I know the type of person that they are, therefore I feel safe, they're unlikely to cause me harm. We see this again in forensic psychology, where in problematic relationships, for example. We see someone who has problematic relationships with one person, then another, and they continue to have relationships with people with similar issues, similar problems. We say, well, hang on, why are you continuing that relationship when it's not obviously worked out before? That person's got the same problematic qualities that person's 1, 2, and 3 had. But it's because of the familiarity principle. We go to what we know. We go to what makes sense to us. So it's not just someone who looks familiar, not just someone who reminds us of someone else. It's familiar behaviour. That might be someone who likes to be very much in charge, which can go to the point of almost controlling behaviour. But that behaviour, the way that someone behaves, if we see that familiar behaviour that we know, that we recognise from others, we are attracted to that, even if that is a negative behaviour. So, just very briefly, how can this be applied to other areas of psychology? And anytime I talk about other areas of psychology, I'm generally talking about forensic psychology, because I really like forensic psychology. One of the areas that we use familiarity and routine in forensic psychology is in understanding geographical profiling. So quick show of hands, who's heard of geographical profiling? Excellent. Okay, with geographical profiling, we are trying to take an offender's understanding of what's familiar to them, what do they know, what do they do again and again, so all the things like Christmas traditions, but they're taking that familiarity and they're using it in their offending behaviour. So with geographical profiling, we're trying to find an offender's base of operations. So that might be their home, it might be where they live, or it might be a bar they frequent, it might be their workplace, it might be a lockup, it might be a relative's home. But their base of operations, somewhere they move out from to commit their offending behaviour, and then they go back to afterwards. So we can use their patterns of thinking, we can use their consistent traditions of behaviour to help determine their base of operations. So, quick introduction to this routine activity theory, which is understanding these traditions. In order for an offence to take place, we need three things: a motivated offender, someone who's willing to do the crime, a suitable victim, and then the absence of a guardian able to protect the victim. Now, if all those three things are going to be in place, our offender has to choose the right location to commit that offence. And if they're going to choose the right location, that will generally be somewhere that they know. So, if we're a geographical profiler and we are trying to determine where an offender's base of operations might be, we look at where they committed their offences. These are the places that they know. These are the places that they move around in. So that is their awareness space. I'm just going to show you very briefly what an awareness space looks like. You can draw out your own afterwards if you are so inclined. So, this is my house. This is University of Worcester. This is my kids' school. And this is University of Worcester Arena, where I go to watch basketball. Go Wolves. So, here are my four locations that I go to most often. What I'm interested in seeing is how I move around between them. So, every day I leave my house and I go to the kids' school, drop them off, and then I come to University of Worcester. Lovely. And then when I leave, I go here. I never make this journey. I never go from uni to home. Tempting as it might be, I have to collect the kids, pick them up and take them home with me. So, we might go from home to the arena, we might go from the arena to UW, but we never go from home to school or school to the arena. So I've got my key locations and I can start to see how I move around between those locations. That's my awareness space. Those are my traditions. My traditions, my patterns, my consistent behaviour. I go to those places I'm familiar with and I move around between them in the same way, just like an offender would do. So, if we were plotting out an offender's routine activity theory, for example, we might say, where are the places that the crime scenes happened? So we've got our little crime scenes in our, not very tall, here, and right up the top. We might say, where are the areas that are important to them? So we would start to plot out where they might be moving between, and that can help us determine their base of operations. So I realise it's quite a leap from Christmas traditions, stalking, tree, to determining an offender's base of operations. But the reality is, within psychology, that's the beauty of it. We can take the psychology of behaviour as it links to Christmas, as it links to putting up a tree or hanging up a stocking or having turkey, to looking at how someone's behaviour on a day-to-day basis is affected by their tradition, by familiarity, by what they know. Because the idea being that we make a rational choice. We make a sort of cost-benefit analysis. What is this going to cost me? But what am I going to gain from it? So if someone is familiar with an area, for example, then they might think, hang on, I feel okay moving around this area. I know the area. I know where I can move around. I know where I can escape to, for example. And the downside of that might be that actually there's a lot of police in that area or a lot of CCTV in that area. So our offenders are making a cost-benefit analysis using their familiarity, using what they know about an area, and using what they know about how to move around an area. So, how does familiarity and tradition and doing the same thing again and again, time after time, how does that impact geographical profiling? So I've just sort of had a look throughout it and thought of the key concepts that are affected by familiarity. So the first one is distance decay. Ooh, unexpectedly magnetic. Okay, so if we think about distance decay, here's your house. It's their offender's base of operations, and they will travel out from that to commit an offence. The further away they go from their home, the less likely they are to commit an offence. Distance decay. They're likely to do it here, less likely here, even less likely here. Because the further away you go, it becomes less what? Less familiar. So you're thinking about what's familiar, what do you do again and again. You might go to this area all the time, but you might never travel this far out to get to this area. It's not familiar to you. Okay, there's no pattern, you don't have any knowledge of here. So you go to what you know. You go to what's consistent for you. But if it was just the case that we were just looking for an offender moving out, it would be dead easy. When they were committing offences, they'd probably just do them all around their home. And we could easily say, there's their base, we found them. But that's not what they do. We have a little buffer zone. So our offender knows they do not want to commit a crime, say 2 doors down from their own house. That would be a little bit obvious. They're probably more forensically aware than that. So we have our buffer zone. Buffer zone where they don't commit an offence and then they travel out to commit that offence to these familiar areas. So you end up with this kind of donut-shaped map where you've got your buffer zone in the middle. Then you've got your bit here where they're really familiar with this whole area. They move around it. This is their awareness space. They know the streets. They know where the CCTV cameras are. They know these areas. They are familiar with them. So this is where they commit their offence. And likewise, we can see if they are disposing evidence, etc. They will follow this exact pattern. They will move out to dispose of evidence in an area that is familiar to them. So our last 2 terms are domocentricity. So this is the idea that our base of operations is right at the centre, right at the heart of the area that we know, the area that's familiar, using those patterns that are familiar to you again and again. And then finally, our final 2 terms are commuter versus marauder. And this is our idea of our offender who's using tradition and familiarity in very different ways. So we have our marauder offender. Here's their home. They leave their home to commit an offence. And their next one's up here, and their next one's over here, and their next one's over here. Now, in their mind, they're moving out in different directions, moving out to different places to commit those offences. But what it actually looks like to a geographic profiler is that if you can chart out the order they committed these offences in, it becomes pretty clear where the base of operations must be. So that's our marauder offender. Our commuter, as the name suggests, they travel. They don't travel out from their home. They go over here to commit an offence, and then they travel back. And then the next time, they go over here again, and they travel back. Now, chances are there's probably something over here that they really like a specific type of victim, for example, that they want. But how do they know that specific type of victim is over there? Because they know the area. They are familiar with that area. Our commuter offender will only travel over here if they're familiar with it, if they know it. Okay, so we see our offenders basing their behaviour, basing what they're prepared to do in the course of their offence on what they know, what's familiar to them. So, this has all been a very brief snapshot of geographical profiling, but you can take a concept like familiarity. How do we use what's important to us? How do we do the same thing again and again and gain something from that? How do you take that in the format of Christmas? But then how can you also apply it? So this is something, if you come to study psychology with us, you'll see again and again. We're taking theories, we're looking at different applications of theories, and we're thinking, how can you apply that theory to a number of different areas? So we might be looking at something like memory or attention, and thinking about how do we apply that in different fields, clinical, counselling, forensic psychology. Because it's really important that you're not just learning theories verbatim, but you're thinking about how can I apply those theories? What can I do with that knowledge? And how does that help me understand it? So we have this really strong emphasis on applying theories within psychology. And it's something that goes down really well with our students here. And hopefully giving a bit of a snapshot into how we do that has been helpful today. So we are at the end of our short sessions. Thank you all for sitting and sort of listening and engaging so well.